Anyone who has traveled across multiple time zones has undoubtedly experienced the debilitating effects of jet lag. From daytime fatigue to feeling wired at night, it wreaks havoc on your body and your brain, and then trickles out into all the things that you're doing in life. This is especially true if you're not familiar with how jet lag works and you feel unprepared for it. Yes, jet lag is one of those health situations that you can actually prepare for, and you should. Especially if you're a performance-oriented individual that travels and needs to arrive feeling cognitively and physically sharp. Maybe you're an athlete and you have international games or competitions, or you're a business person and you have really important meetings to get to. This video is going to help you understand how jet lag will affect you in the future and what you can do to better prepare for it, and if it's possible to even prevent it. So go ahead and get a pad of paper and a pen. This is going to be something that you definitely want to take notes on. Now, jet lag is actually a recognized sleep disorder that occurs when someone travels at least 2 time zones away, also known as transmeridian travel. The symptoms associated with jet lag are insomnia, daytime fatigue, moodiness and agitation, difficulty concentrating, lapses in memory, stomach problems and gastrointestinal issues, as well as just generally feeling like you are totally off. These symptoms happen because your body's circadian rhythm is off from the local time. Your body has a sleep and awake cycle that coordinates with the local light and dark cycle, meaning sunrise and sunset. If you all of a sudden are launched through the hemisphere and landing in a new place with a new timing of sunrise and sunset, but your internal sleep and wake cycle is still back home, it's going to lead to a whole host of jet lag problems. You'll experience drowsiness and arousal at inappropriate times. So let's go ahead and use an example. Let's say you're traveling from New York to Paris. You leave New York at 4 p.m. on Tuesday, and you arrive in Paris at 7 a.m. on Wednesday. Yet your internal body clock thinks it's 1 a.m. on Wednesday. So while you're just getting ready for bed and getting to your hotel, everyone around you is waking up, drinking coffee, and going to work. Why this happens is simply because you're an animal that takes environmental cues in order to operate on a consistent rhythm. So your body is looking for things like sunrise, sunset, meal timing, exercise timing, and exposure to light in order to coordinate all the inner workings of your body. Out of these, one of the most important things to consider is exposure to light and how it relates to the production of melatonin. Now, melatonin is a hormone that's secreted primarily in the pineal gland of your brain for 10 to 12 hours at night, and it helps to induce sleepiness. Light, on the other hand, suppresses melatonin and stimulates arousal. Now, all of this is controlled by what's called the master clock that's in your brain that tells your body what time of day it is and what it should be doing. In fact, all of the organs in your body also operate on their own sub-clocks, and this is why you have very consistent timing of hunger levels, hormone levels, body temperature, bowel movements, etc. When you travel, all of these components are disrupted. These internal clocks are shifted. Now, that point will be further driven home here over the course of this video, but I just want to talk to you about the symptoms that you're going to experience with jet lag. For each time zone that you're crossing, you can expect your symptoms to last up to 1 day. It's generally believed that the further from your home place that you're traveling to, the longer and more severe those jet lag symptoms will last. However, not all travel is created equal. In fact, our bodies have an easier time traveling west than they do traveling east. And that's because these internal clocks, these internal rhythms that I've talked about, are actually operating on a slightly longer 24-hour cycle. You know that we live our calendar days by 24 hours, yet our actual internal rhythms are about 24 hours and 15 minutes. So we have an easier time lengthening our day than we do shortening it, which is why it's easier to travel east than it is traveling west. Now, who you are as an individual may actually affect how severe the jet lag symptoms are going to be for you, regardless if you're traveling west or east. For example, depending on your body's chronotype and when you actually prefer to wake up may make travel easier or harder. If you're a morning type of individual and you like to get up early and get going, then traveling east may actually be easier for you. Whereas if you're an evening person and you like to sleep in, then traveling west may be easier for you. Similarly, if you are someone who has really rigid sleeping habits and you have to go to bed and wake up at the same exact time every day, and everything throughout your day is totally dialed at a certain time, you're gonna find that international travel or transmeridian travel is gonna be a little bit harder for you. Those who have more flexibility and kind of do things whenever are gonna find it easier to adapt. So planning ahead and preparing is absolutely crucial. Now, to add a little bit of fuel to the fire, let's go ahead and talk about what jet lag is actually doing to your body on a physical and a cognitive level. Assuming that you're an athlete and that you're traveling for a game or a race or a competition, here's some of the things that you can expect without any sort of forward planning. You can expect a decrease in your peak muscle force, your anaerobic power output, ventilation, heart rate variability, endurance, and muscle recovery. In fact, researchers from Northwestern University followed Major League Baseball over the course of 20 years. They looked at 40,000 games, and what they found was that teams that had traveled from west to east had a subtle but detectable difference in performance. Everything from pitching to running to hitting averages all were lower for teams that traveled from west to east. Actually, when we look at sports entirely, any athletes who travel from west to east and then play at night have a noticeable decrease in performance. So something to consider if you're an athlete and you're traveling for a competition, that you're really going to want to do some work ahead of time, as well as maybe even arrive a few days early. Now, what's happening on a cognitive level? This is where jet lag really gets awful for so many people. Everything from mood regulation to your ability to handle complex, detail-oriented tasks immediately deteriorate the moment you have a circadian rhythm disruption. Things like driving a car at high speeds or making really important financial decisions. It's as if you're asking your body and your brain at 2 a.m, getting ripped out of sleep, to do those things. So something to keep in mind. Now, travelers are also going to experience just a general lack of motivation, maybe apathy, mental clouding, and agitation. So putting yourself in really important business meetings where your mood matters and your mental output matters is really important. It's important to consider. Even things like lapses in memory and your ability to learn new information, those are compromised because of possible hippocampal deficits. Okay, so now that I've got you totally freaked out about jet lag, what can you do to overcome it? Here's the thing, jet lag is not something that you can completely avoid, but you can dramatically decrease the symptoms so that when you arrive at your destination, life is better. Okay, here is the best thing that you can do. It is to plan ahead and prepare and begin shifting your own internal circadian rhythm to the time of your destination. What do I mean by this? So you are currently operating in your home time zone. I want you to look at where it is you're traveling to, the time zone of your destination, and begin shifting your daily practices toward that. Everything from when you wake up to when you go to bed, to when you eat your meals, to when you exercise, to when you get light, to when you're drinking caffeine. All of these things are going to start shifting the master clock and the clocks of your internal organs into the time zone of your destination, which will ultimately dramatically reduce the symptoms of jet lag. Okay, so let's go ahead and use that same New York to Paris as an example. Let's say you're leaving New York at 4 p.m. on Tuesday and you're arriving in Paris at 7 a.m. on Wednesday. If you did nothing to prepare for this trip, you're going to arrive thinking that it's 1 a.m. Your body is going to think it's 1 a.m. However, let's say that on Friday, before your trip, you start shifting things. You start waking up 30 minutes earlier and then eating food 30 minutes earlier, and all your things throughout your day, you shift it 30 minutes earlier. And then Saturday, it's an hour earlier. Sunday and Monday, it's 2 hours earlier. And then by Tuesday, you're up to 3 hours earlier. So maybe you normally get up at 7 a.m. and now you're getting up at 4 a.m. What that's going to do, though, is that when you arrive in Paris at 7 a.m., your internal body clock no longer thinks it's 1 a.m. It actually thinks it's 4 a.m. because you've done 3 hours of shifting prior. So now your time discrepancy when you're in Paris is only 3 hours, which is so much easier to manage than 6 hours. This goes for both westward and eastward travel. If you're traveling east, start doing everything a little bit earlier. If you're traveling west, start pushing things back a little bit later. Now, the best thing that you can do for all of this is timed light exposure. Like I said before, light goes from the external world through your eyes into your brain and stimulates your master clock. It tells your master clock what time it is and what it should be doing, whether it should feel alert or whether it should feel tired. So if you are shifting your circadian rhythm, you want to be strategic about when you're getting light. Early morning light is going to help shift your rhythm forward. Light at night will begin shifting your rhythm back. So eastward travel, get up, get exposure to light as soon as you can. If the sun isn't up yet, turn all the lights in your house on. If you're traveling west, then you want to stay looking at light later on. You want to turn the lights on in your house at night so that you can stay up a little bit later. This also goes for light from your devices. So blue light exposure is really important, and you want to be careful how much of it you're getting and when. If you need to reduce your blue light exposure, then try to not use technology at night, or download blue blocking plugins like Flux. Use night mode on your phone and your devices and get blue blocking glasses. Does this sound like a lot for you to figure out on your own? It might be if you've got too much going on. So why don't you just outsource the whole decision-making process in the lead up to your trip? There's an app that'll do this work for you, and it's called Time Shifter. It was developed by a Harvard University professor, and it takes a totally custom look at who you are and the trip that you're about to take. It'll then spit out a fully custom plan of when to go to sleep, when to exercise, when to get exposure to light, when to drink caffeine, and also strategic naps. So it might be really helpful for you if you're finding yourself really busy but wanting to shift in quite a big way. The biggest takeaway from this whole video is that you start living in the time zone of your destination. This is really important too for the time that you're spending on the flight. So although it can be tempting to get into your seat and immediately pass out even before the safety spiel is given, I want you to think about what is the time of your destination. If everyone there is sleeping and it's nighttime, then knock yourself out, take a nap, take a long extended nap on the flight. However, if it's the morning time or afternoon, do what you can to stay awake. So be careful about how you're consuming entertainment and food and caffeine on the flight. Which gets me to a really good point: caffeine. So many people think that they can just beat jet lag by just drinking a whole bunch of coffee. Well, that will actually undermine the entire process and probably make your symptoms worse. Caffeine from coffee or energy drinks might sound like a great idea after you've done all the travel to the airport and you're just totally exhausted. But again, think about the time at your destination. Are people there drinking coffee and caffeine at that time? If so, then okay, maybe you can think about drinking it yourself. But if it's past 2 p.m. at your destination, then I want you to do your best to hold off. Caffeine has a half-life of 8 hours, and it can really mess up your sleep, both on the flight and then when you get to your new destination. That said, once you arrive and you've got a big meeting or a big event that you need to get to, caffeine could be a performance enhancer, as long as it's taken early enough in the day. Another supplement that people have a lot of questions about when it comes to jet lag and international travel is melatonin. Now, melatonin is great for inducing sleepiness during times when you are otherwise wide awake, and we're typically talking about 0.3 milligrams upwards of 1 milligram. But it also is something that can be used inappropriately. So when it comes to jet lag, you just want to take it to induce sleepiness during the times that you should be sleeping, given the time at your destination. If you want to know more about melatonin, we do a much deeper dive of it in another video, so go ahead and check that out after this one. Okay, so a more advanced tactic that you can consider is fasting. As I talked about before, the timing of our meals matters greatly to our internal body clocks. It signifies whether or not we should be alert or we should start winding down and getting tired. So when you remove food from the equation entirely, it actually helps to reboot the whole energy, sleep, wake cycle and get back to more of a neutral ground so that when you arrive at your destination, you have an easier time assimilating. That said, fasting is something that should only be implemented by those who are already experienced with it and where their bodies are used to it. So talk to your doctor, talk to your physician, and see if it's something that works for you. If you're experienced with it, maybe something to consider. As a last little thought, if you're able to control when you travel to your destination, try to get there a couple of days prior to whatever performance-oriented event you have going on. Even though you can do so much to mitigate the symptoms of jet lag, there's still going to be some sort of discrepancy between your own internal sleep-wake cycle and the light-dark cycle of your destination. So when you get there, you can just continue doing this work. Get on their feeding schedule, get on their caffeine consumption schedule, go to bed when they typically are, and get up when they are. If you have a couple of days to really do this, then you're going to feel so much mentally and physically capable for whatever it is you're there for. Regardless though, planning and preparing ahead of time is going to be your best friend from here on out. So hopefully this video was helpful for you guys. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up below. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and share with any travel-loving, high-performance friend in your life. We'll see you soon. Thanks.